let's go to Unit 3, which was rational functions. And rational functions were when the variable was in the denominator or the bottom. So one of the first things we looked at was, how do I find undefined values of an expression? So when we're talking about undefined, that means what makes that denominator 0? Because undefined means we cannot do it, and we cannot divide by 0. So for example, maybe it was 2 over x plus 5. So we would say, what makes the bottom 0? That's the undefined value. So x plus 5 equals 0. And if we solve that, we'll get x equals negative 5. Negative 5 plus 5 is 0, so that would be the undefined value. And that also matches up with our asymptote. So when we looked at graphs, the asymptote matched up with our undefined value here. We also added and subtracted rational expressions. So when we're adding or subtracting, we need to make sure that we have a common denominator. If we don't have a common denominator, we have to make one. And to do that, we multiplied each of our expressions by the denominator of the other one. And then we simplified. So we did not solve anything, we just added and subtracted them together. How do I multiply rational expressions? So when we multiply, that's where you might see something like that. When I multiply, I'm trying to see if I can factor and cancel. So anything that I see in the top and the bottom, I'm going to cancel. So cancel if there's the same top as the bottom. So if I factor this and I have an x minus 3, then I can cancel those out. We also looked at matching graphs to equations and asymptotes. So when we're matching, first we checked the asymptotes. And there were 2. There was x equals some number, and those ones are vertical. And then we also had y equals a number. And you might remember that most of the time it ended up being y equals 0. And those were the horizontal. Once we found the asymptotes, then we used that to match the equation. So, meaning we could match the asymptote to the undefined value of the equation we had. So if the asymptote is here, then that means underneath it should be x plus 5. We also solved equations. So the first thing we tried to do was factor, if possible. We found that if we factored, then we were able to cancel, and it made our problem a lot easier. But if we could not, then we would just cross multiply and then solve. If we ended up with x squared, then we factored to solve it. So try to factor and cancel out if you can. If not, then cross multiply. If you get a quadratic, then you have to factor it to solve it. And the last thing that we wanted to watch out for was extraneous solutions. So that means they're fake answers, they're not real, so we eliminate them. They are the undefined answers. So we check and see, is it an undefined value for this expression? And if it is, then it's not a real answer, so we leave it out. And that is a wrap for rationals.